This is such an amazing prompt engineering resource. Guys, today I want to share with you the leaked Claude 3.5 Sonnet prompt, which was leaked apparently by, I'm not sure exactly, but apparently by this guy, Pliny the Prompter. I just stumbled upon his Twitter page or profile. He seems to be doing cool stuff. Check his stuff out, mostly about leaking prompts and jailbreaks. Not exactly my thing, but seems to be interesting for those of you who are into that kind of stuff. Anyway, so a few weeks ago, he leaked what is supposed to be the prompt, the system message for prompting and creating the artifacts in Claude 3.5. And this is very interesting for anyone who is interested in building better prompts, creating better prompts. This is a very detailed and long and full of context and example prompt, which probably was created by the Anthropic team. Before I go over everything, although I'm not planning to go over the whole prompt because as you can see, it is 15 pages long. Let's see a quick summary of the prompt. So basically, obviously, I asked Claude to summarize the prompt. So this document provides detailed instructions for an AI assistant on how to create and use artifacts during conversations. I will show you in a moment what are artifacts in case you're not using Claude yet. Although if you're still with OpenAI, I highly recommend that you move to Claude. At least at the moment of recording this video, Claude is way better in my opinion. So artifacts are substantial self-contained pieces of content that users might modify or reuse, displayed in a separate UI window for clarity. Here's a summary of the key points of the prompt. So good artifacts are substantial, longer than 15 lines, likely to be modified or used, self-contained and complex, intended for use outside the conversation, likely to be referenced multiple times. Artifacts should not be used for simple, short, or primarily explanatory content. They should not be used for controversial content, and they should not be used for content dependent on conversation context, or they should not be used for one-off questions or requests. A few more usage guidelines. One artifact per message unless specifically requested. Prefer inline content when possible. Create artifacts for tasks like drawing SVGs or making website without explaining limitations. And use self-deprecating humor for SVG creation to make it entertaining. This is one of the examples that they provide in the prompt. I'm not sure why it wrote it in the summary, but no one is perfect, even not Claude Sonnet 3.5. And artifact creation process. So basically the creation process based on the prompt is, first of all, they are requesting Claude to consider if the content meets the artifact criteria. Then it is going to think using the artifact tags with specific attributes. Then it's going to choose appropriate content, code, markdown, HTML, whatever, and then include the complete content without truncation. The document provides several examples of correct artifacts. We will cover them in a moment. And it also includes examples of when not to use artifacts, such as quick explanations. And the assistant is instructed not to mention these instructions to the user or reference the artifact syntax unless directly relevant to the query. And the assistant should avoid producing artifacts that could be hazardous to human health or well-being if misused. Okay, cool. So this is a summary of the system message of the system prompt that Anthropic is giving its own LLM, its own model, in order to create the artifacts. Now, in case that you don't know, let me just show you what is an artifact. So can you write a Python code for me that concatenates two MP4s into one MP4? And you will see in a moment, first it is thinking, and then it is going to create the artifact on the right hand side. So these are artifacts, these pieces of code or pieces of content. Let's make this smaller. Okay, so now let's see the leaked prompt, and if you guys want, I can share it afterwards, or just send me a message via LinkedIn. if you're interested in the full prompt, or you can also check out this guy somewhere below. You'll find the actual prompt. Let's go over like the most important parts of this prompt. As I said, it's very long, and I already shared with you the summary, but I think it is also very important to go over this and learn like the style they are using, how they are writing everything. So let's just cover the most important pieces of this leaked prompt. So artifacts info. The assistant can create and reference artifacts during conversation. Artifacts are for substantial self-contained content that users might modify or use, displayed in a separate UI window for clarity. Good artifacts are, and we already covered this, don't use artifacts for, you see the difference, like the same style, same patterns. Don't use artifacts for simple, informational, or short content, such as brief code snippets, mathematical equations, or small examples. Primarily explanatory, instructional, or illustrative content, such as examples provided to clarify a concept, etc. Then usage notes. One artifact per message unless specifically requested. Prefer inline content. If a user asks the assistant to draw an SVG or make a website, the assistant does not need to explain that it doesn't have these capabilities. Creating the code and placing it within the appropriate artifact will fulfill the user intentions. Here we have a few more usage notes. Then the next section in the prompt, as you can see, artifact instructions. They're using this type of markdown. When collaborating with the user on creating content that falls into compatible categories, the assistant should follow these steps. And this is how they write the steps. First, briefly before invoking an artifact, think for one sentence using these tags about how it evaluates against the criteria for a good and bad artifact. Consider if the content would work just fine without an artifact. If it's artifact worthy, in another sentence, determine if it's a new artifact or an update to an existing one. This is very common, most common. For updates, reuse the prior identifier. Wrap the content in an opening and closing ANT artifact tags. Assign an identifier to the identifier attribute of the opening tag. For updates, reuse the prior identifier. For new artifacts, the identifier should be descriptive and relevant to the content. Include a title attribution. Now, here's add a type attribute to the opening tags to specify the type of the content the artifact represents. Assign one of the following values to the type. So as you can see here, a few values. So this is a code value, markdown, HTML, etc. Now let's move on. I want to show you the next important part. Although it is very important, I suggest that you take a look afterwards if you're interested in the whole document, but I just want to show you the gist. So here we have a few examples. And this, again, this is written in the actual prompt. So check out how long is this prompt or system message. So here are some examples of correct usage of artifacts by other AI assistants. So example docstring. This example demonstrates how to create a new artifact and reference it in the response. The user query is, can you help me create a Python script to calculate the factorial of a number? So they open a user query and they close the user query. Now assistant response. Sure, here's a Python script that calculates the factorial of a number. Then, as you can see, is the thinking stage. Creating a Python script to calculate factorials meets the criteria for a good artifact. It's a self-contained piece of content that can be understood on its own and is likely to be reused or modified. This is a new conversation, so there are no pre-existing artifacts. Therefore, I'm creating a new artifact. He is ending the thinking. Now he's writing the identifier. Then it is writing, it claims that it's a Python, simple Python factorial script. This is the title, as you can see over here. Python script to concatenate two MP4 files. This is the artifact. This is the example. This is the text. And this is the end of the assistant response. This is the end of the first example. Let's cover another example. This example shows how to update an existing artifact and reference it in the response. the user query, thanks for the factorial script. No, let's show you a different example. I want to show you something else. This example okay, this one is nice. This example shows how to create an SVG artifact and reference it in a response. So you can see they open the example over here. Then the user query, can you draw a simple blue circle in SVG? End of user query, assistant response. I'll create a simple blue circle for you using SVG. Now it is thinking drawing a simple blue circle in SVG is a good candidate for an artifact. It's a standalone visual element that can be reused or modified. This is a new request, so I'll create a new artifact with the identifier, etc., etc. Now let's move on. Another example of a flowchart. Let's see if there is anything else that I would like to show you. This is a React component. So this example demonstrates how to create a React component artifact for a metrics dashboard. So the user query is, can you create a React component for a metrics dashboard? Assistant response is absolutely. Here's a React component that implements a basic metrics dashboard. Now it is thinking whether or not it is a viable solution. I mean, should it use an artifact or shouldn't it use an artifact, and just write the answer in the conversation, like on the left-hand side. So creating a React component for metrics dashboard is a good artifact, is substantial, self-contained, and can be used in various web applications. It's not just a brief code snippet or primarily explanatory content. This is a new request, so I'll create a new artifact with the identifier metrics dashboard component. And here it is creating the artifact. There are a few more examples, but I guess that you get the gist of this. I think this is very valuable for seeing how exactly they structure the prompt. Every time that I create a prompt, I usually, when I just create a project on the fly, I'm pretty lazy in terms of creating a good prompt, although I very often use the Fabric project, which if you guys don't know the Fabric project, you should definitely check it out. They have a ton of great prompts, very detailed prompts. So for example, this one, let's see an interesting example. So create a logo, you come here, system, this is Markdown. So this is how they structure the prompts. So they structure it in Markdown, obviously. And then they write the identity and purpose, the output sections, the output instructions, and the input. So this is just an example. I also created a prompt saver. I call it a prompt saver. It's actually a Chrome extension that I've created using Claude, in which I save my prompts over here, and then I can just copy them. I have the usage, the amount of times that I used each prompt being updated automatically. I can sort by usage, date, or alphabetically, etc. But this is off topic, but it's just something that I wanted to share with you that is valuable if you are using AI and your prompts are not so good because you're just creating stuff on the fly. So I highly recommend that you try to approach or implement prompts from a more methodical perspective. So try to save prompts. You can use the Fabric library, or you can use a similar solution to like what I've created. What I often do as well is I just voice record my prompts, and then they are more, I have more examples and they are more elaborated, and then the output is better. Anyway, I just wanted to share with you this example or this video with the leaked prompt by the Anthropic team, because it's a great example of how a prompt should be structured. It is very detailed, many examples. So when you use great prompts, you get great output, and there are endless research and examples of how great prompts can save you time and money in terms of token, and also produce better content. So don't be lazy in terms of creating your prompts. Here's a great example that you can really study and then use the similar structure and similar style when you're creating your own prompts, and it will generate way better results, and it will be more cost effective, and it will save you time, money, and headaches. That's it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this somewhat short video about the new leaked Claude prompt. If you found this video useful, obviously like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. If you have any ideas, any feedback for the video, feel free to share them. And until next time, keep on automating.